brutality of our history, something that to the present we've refused to do. In Germany, they have fully come to terms with the Holocaust that took place at the Nazi government hands and on their soil and on their neighbor's soil because of what their government did. And that creates not only a cathartic effect, but it helps to ensure that history will not repeat itself. We've consistently refused to come to terms with our history, so we don't discuss the systematic massacre and expulsion of the indigenous population, and we don't discuss the systematic oppression and terrorism towards our black population. For example, Brian Stevens is, of course, working valiantly and heroically to ensure that we have memorials throughout the United States to the victims of lynching. Now, despite his brilliant efforts, that campaign has not gotten very far, because we like to put the ugly parts of our history in a closet to never look at while we have 4th of July celebrations and while we celebrate President's Day and acknowledge the more flattering and inspiring parts of our history. Well, that is a recipe for catastrophe, because if we don't fully come to terms with the brutality and violence of our history, then we leave ourselves ill-equipped to stop a repetition of that violence and brutality. So that's another reason why it is important that this bill pass and that we continue to discuss it in conversations such as this one.
As I go to the callers, it's very interesting. It's very interesting that Charlottesville, Virginia, the home of our president, one of our past presidents, obviously, Thomas Jefferson, instead of commemorating his birthday, they will celebrate a holiday commemorating the end of slavery. That's very interesting. It's the first time in the history of Charlottesville that is going to happen. Let me go to you, Doogie, and as I'm taking calls about this and about Super Tuesday. Before I let these two go, I've got to ask them about Super Tuesday because I know they got some thoughts. How you doing, Doogie?
Good morning, Santita. How are you?
Wonderful hearing your voice.
Great, thank you. I wanna say that of course it's great to have this law on the books, but we're not going to get any action on it until we elect an administration that is not going to install another Jeff Sessions into the DOJ. But let me say that lynchings are still happening today for people who don't understand. For example, down in Ferguson, Missouri, we've had 6 activists that have been mysteriously killed or lynched. But I want to bring light to one of Donye Jones. And I interact with his mother a few times. And Donye Jones was found hanging from a tree with his pants down. That is a lynching. And they're disguising them today as suicides. His death was ruled a suicide. There's no way that is a suicide. So it's Donye Jones out of Ferguson, Missouri. And if anybody doesn't understand that this is still happening today, and I think this is great that we're taking action on it.
Do you think it's happening so you're saying it's happening in secret today?
Well, yeah, they're just because we've had multiple, incidents of finding African American men hanging from trees in the South, and so it's not as a spectacle thing, but they're now, I believe that they're now disguising them as suicides, but they're still following through with their mission. But then somebody's discovered early in the morning, and it's just heartbreaking, and it's also infuriating.
Thank you, Doogie. Bless your heart. It's a lot, and I think, these are the ugly parts of our history we don't want to discuss. But I think it's really necessary that we discuss these parts of our history You can't, if you don't want to reveal it, you can never heal it. You know, I mean, and it is, it impacts black, white, brown, yellow, and red. It impacts all Americans because it's our shared history, David Masiotra.
Yes, absolutely. And as I was saying earlier, we that's not, it doesn't have to depress us or suppress our will to acknowledge that we have these dark stories and traditions within our history, because there are also stories of traditions that emanated out of a desire and will to resist. So George Wallace is part of an American tradition. Martin Luther King is part of an American tradition. Donald Trump is part of an American tradition. No matter what some pundits say, he is not un-American. Jesse Jackson is part of an American tradition. So, and you can do this in every sector of our society. Ted Nugent's part of an American tradition. Bruce Springsteen's part of an American tradition. It is incumbent upon us as citizens to choose with what tradition we will align and to what tradition we will contribute. And that is when voting comes into play. That is when activism comes into play. That's when dialogue comes into play. So we have it within our power to either strengthen or weaken one of those traditions. But if we sit on the sideline, if we only spectate, then we deprive ourselves of our responsibility and opportunity to make a beneficial impact on our country.
Well, now you just mentioned voting. Today, I mean, we are in the midst of a really, really contentious election season. Indeed, a University of Florida study shows that, and they've been very accurate. Dr. Michael McDonald says his studies show that we will have more people voting in terms of percentages of Americans who are eligible to vote than have voted since 1908. Between 180 million and 190 million Americans will be voting, everybody. Everybody's trying to get involved, and I hope it gets up to 100%. Yes, and the fear is that the system itself will not be able to handle this many people voting. And, because the system was never designed for all of you to vote in the first place. So let's just get real about this. What do you see? Well, first you, Dwight McKee, and then you, David Masiotra. Super Tuesday. What do you see happening? I mean, we see Buttigieg, and we saw Senator Klobuchar. They got out of the race. You see, they endorsed Joe Biden along with Beto O'Rourke. I have to tell you, that shocked me. That surprised me. It really did. What do you see with Super Tuesday? What are you seeing in this election season, Dwight McKee?
I see chaos on the horizon. I see a calculated effort to stop Bernie, and then for the second time. And I don't think he won't go kicking and screaming. I see a very divided. I think that Carolina is probably an aberration, that Biden would not get that kind of black vote at that with those margins again. But I think he'll get just enough with the dropouts that he can. It won't be a runaway for him, which will take them into Milwaukee. But with the superdelegates being the variable, and I think that most of the superdelegates are part of the party, and so he would have a polarity, but he would not have the needed amount for the nomination. And when they kick it back to the voters, and they come up with a compromise candidate, I think it's going to be a recipe for chaos.
What do you? Yes, continue.
Very quickly, is I really appreciate David's point about tradition, is that at some levels lynching reflected the worst of who we were, but another level, lynching of neighbor was very hostile, but uh, it projected a love of neighbor also. And so at one levels we did have the Emmett Till situation, but at another level we did have the Charneys and the
Oh, Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. Yes.
Presley that came south and put their lives at risk based on love of neighbor. And so it is based on what tradition you decide to operate in.
Mm. Everybody, it seems that we do have a choice. David Masiotra?
Yeah, you mentioned Super Tuesday, and it's important to clarify. I have a book forthcoming in October from Bloomsbury Publishing. I Am Somebody, Why Jesse Jackson Matters. The DNC created Super Tuesday in order to undermine the Jackson campaign, because in 1984, the Jackson campaign didn't have the money of other campaigns. Therefore, they wouldn't have the capability of flying to all of these states in such a short period of time before the Super Tuesday vote. And that's something that's now well documented, and certain party insiders have gone on record in admission of it. So there is, use that word again, tradition. There's a tradition within the Democratic Party of attempting to subvert what they view as an insurgent candidacy because it is too populist, or it is too progressive, or it's taking positions that are really power to the people positions, but they view as too radical and too opposed to the corporate base of the party. So we need to have that history lesson on Super Tuesday. However, I think that Dwight's forecast is correct, which perhaps accuse me of naivete, makes me believe that they won't follow that script this year, simply because, not any out of any moral obligation, but simply because if Bernie Sanders does have a strong plurality, to deprive him of the nomination, they would have to know would be tantamount to political suicide, because Sanders voters then are just going to stay home. They're not going to vote for the compromised candidate over Donald Trump. They'll abstain. So even with all of the stumbling and bumbling of the DNC, they have to know that much.
Well, I would hope so, because, I have to tell you, I lived through this before with the Jackson campaign. For those of my listeners who do not know this, those my new listeners from Talk 101.7 in Milwaukee and Talk 92.7 in Madison, Wisconsin, my father's the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. And I saw the party. He had to run against the party. We saw them create Super Tuesday out of whole cloth because he did so surprisingly well. You started off with many candidates in 1984, but there were only three left standing: Gary Hart, the eventual nominee, Vice President Mondale, and Jesse Jackson. And so they created Super Tuesday, and then they presented the DLC, the right wing of the party, the centrist of the party. They presented a candidate named Senator Al Gore, who was supposed to take Reverend Jesse Jackson out. Instead of taking Jesse Jackson out, Jesse Jackson took him out, because on Super Tuesday he finished first or second in every single state in Super Tuesday. And so I think we have to be mindful of that. This push against progressives in the party is not new. It's not new, but it does need to stop. I've got under 2 minutes, gentlemen. David Masiotra, under a minute. Your closing thought.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I hope everyone will go out and vote today. It's important that they do. To the new listeners in Milwaukee, my wife and I were in Milwaukee recently. We had a wonderful time at the Milwaukee Art Museum, and then the next day there was a mass shooting in Milwaukee, so we were saddened to see that. But that's another reminder of how there's these two Americas in conflict. And the psychologist Carl Jung said that within individuals there's a shadow and a light side. And if individuals don't recognize their shadow side eventually they'll lose the light. And that's why the Emmett Till bill is important, and that's why these conversations are important. We have to navigate the shadow side in order to keep track of the light.
I've got about 30 seconds for you, Dwight McKee.
Unlike Dave, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, we disagree on one point, and it is I think that the DNC would rather have Donald Trump than Bernie Sanders. If Donald Trump is the president, at least they'll keep their jobs and their power. If Bernie becomes the lead in the party, he will redefine the party, and he will take it in a different direction, and those who have jobs and power won't have that same level of influence.
That's going to have to be the final thought. You know, because really, you're right. It's the corporate moneyed interests that are pushing against Bernie. It's not just an individual. Look at the corporate interest, everybody. Love you both, David Maciotra and Dwight McKee, talking about Super Tuesday when we get back on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in a minute.
Hey, it's Brock from Hero Power. Did you know Illinois residents have been overcharged $800 million by their electricity suppliers since 2015? Don't want to get caught overpaying for your electricity? Luckily, there's help. Join Hero Power and you'll make sure you only pay the ComEd basic electric rate forever. And Hero Power matches 100% of your electricity consumption with Green E certified renewable energy certificates. With Hero Power, you can put your money toward renewable energy every time you pay your electricity bill and never
I love you, David.
Love you. Pay for clean energy. Join Hero Power and get a fair price and support renewable energy. And now, WCPT listeners get a $25 credit off their first bill at myheropower.com/WCPT.
Hope to come
Support
on
clean
again.
energy at no extra cost in less than 2 minutes at myheropower.com/WCPT.
Dwight, thank you so
Love
much.
you, Dwight. I'm going to call you after the
Feature your
show.
business in half the resumes. Go to glassdoor.com/hire to find your next hire. Glassdoor.
Bye-bye, honey.
This update brought to you by Glassdoor.
This is AP
I'm
News.
gonna try.
I'm Rita Poland. 7 people dead in Tennessee after tornadoes
Oh, it was
slammed into
awesome.
Nashville and
Again,
other
you
areas
guys
of the
are very
state.
informative.
National Weather Service meteorologist
Perfect.
Mark
And the callers
Williams
are
lives in
keep
Nashville.
coming on.
He was asleep when a
keep
tornado
calling.
came rolling through.
I got woken up in the middle of the night by the storm, and my wife and my dog and I had to hide under in their first on our coat closet underneath the stairs because we could actually hear the tornado where we were passed very close to our house.
The second
The
hour,
tornado
no.
that ripped across downtown Nashville knocked out about 40 buildings. Authorities are still searching for the injured. Millions of voters from Maine, California head to the polls on this Super Tuesday.
Thank
the
you,
front runner in the race for the Democratic presidential nomination is Bernie Sanders. He rallied supporters in St. Paul, Minnesota yesterday.
Let's defeat Trump. Let's transform this country. Thank you all very much.
But rival Joe Biden, who just picked up some important endorsements, implies Bernie Sanders isn't really a Democrat at all.
Democrats want a nominee who's a Democrat. A lifelong Democrat. A proud Democrat. An Obama-Biden Democrat.
President Trump, meanwhile, says he's going to beat whoever the Democrats run against him because they don't have the support he has.
You hear about enthusiasm for Crazy Bernie, and that's true. He does have some enthusiasm, but much less than we have, and a much smaller group of people, too.
The president in Charlotte, North Carolina last night. More than 100 cases of coronavirus have now been confirmed in 11 states in the United States. There have been 6 deaths, all of them in Washington state. Worldwide, more than 90,000 people have been sickened. 3,100 have died from the coronavirus. This is AP News. The Middle East's largest airline, Emirates,
Hey everybody,
is
hope
grounding
you're
some
enjoying
flights
today.
because of the coronavirus.
Emirates says it's adjusted its schedules and
Yes,
capacity
yes,
to meet
Super
the challenge
Tuesday.
in
Okay.
passenger demand and asked employees to take paid and even unpaid leave for up to a month at a time. The airline has cancelled flights to all cities in China except Beijing. The world's largest airline trade association, IATA, says Mideast carriers have already lost around $100 million worth in revenue due to a drop in ticket sales because of the virus. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
Apple has agreed to pay up to $500 million to settle claims over intentionally slowing down older phones to preserve batteries. The company will pay eligible iPhone owners $25 each. Plaintiffs claim they spent hundreds of dollars buying new phones rather than just replacing the batteries because Apple didn't tell them what was going on. Rita Foley, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now your WCPT 820 Chicago traffic update.
Inbound Kennedy delays start around Canfield. It's 31 minutes O'Hare to downtown. A tad quicker the Express. Outbound 25 minutes downtown to O'Hare. Edens runs 19 minutes Lake Hook to the junction. Inbound Eisenhower delays start at Manheim. It's 40 minutes, 390 to downtown. Outbound 31. Inbound Stevenson 40 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. Ryan is 23 minutes, 90 minutes to downtown. I-57 23 minutes, ID to the Verge. Bishop 421. Lakeshore Drive still okay. Northbound Tri-State, traffic is heavy from 95th Street to the Mile-Long Bridge, and from the Reagan Tollway to the Eisenhower. The other tollways look good. Northwest Indiana's fine. That's traffic. I'm Jim Calamonte.
You only want to use the best route to drive across town, so do the same when you need to hire. Indeed provides hiring managers the straightest path to the best new employees. Customized solutions like screener questions and skills tests will help you see beyond the resume. Post your next job at Indeed.com/hire.
Hi, I'm Dr. Willie Wilson. Now, I've dedicated my life in the service of others. As Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, life's most pressing and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? By supporting the reparation bill,
it's called it's a curl defining custard,
education,
and it will make your curls even more defined.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So you can just.
And it's called custard.
Yeah.
Paid for by Dr. Willie Wilson Foundation.org.
Helping Vidalia connect to her black hair.
And it's time for reparations. Reparations for the black
No,
community.
really. I mean, because whenever I used to get my hair done in the Dominican neighborhoods and the Puerto Rican neighborhoods when I lived in New York, because my hair is in between. So they knew how to deal with curly hair. Bottom line. And I also got my hair cut by someone who knew how to deal with curly hair.
I'm asking you to support the bill.
Because I've had natural hair forever. Because
Paid for by Dr. Willie Wilson Foundation.org.
You may not realize how important three letters can be. For a patient who needs type A, B, or O blood, these letters can mean life, but there simply aren't enough people giving blood. Without more donors, hospitals may not have the blood needed to save lives.
I think it's
That's
great,
why
but
the American Red Cross needs people to help restore the A's,
and the
B's,
different
and
things that I
O's
find. The less that I have on my hair, like
you
today,
are the missing
wash
type
and wear,
patients
better
need.
off I
Visit
am.
redcrossblood.org/missing types or call 1-800-RED-CROSS to make your donation appointment today.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT.
And this is one of them, my Cara Care
advertising. And stream the Stephanie Miller Show weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. Wake up, Chicago. This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. We're so excited today on the Santita Jackson Show to be up in two new cities. Of course, our home station, WCPT 820, Chicago, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. We are now on Talk 101.7 in Milwaukee and Talk 92.7 in Madison. Yay! Thank you, Mike Crute, for bringing us into the Devil's Advocate family. Can you believe a preacher's daughter is saying that? Oh my goodness, what am I going to do? We're so excited to be with you today. So blessed. Please continue to call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. On Super Tuesday, we've got the best political talk in the nation right here on this political network, on this progressive radio network. Hey, what do you think is going to happen today? You've got so many states that are voting, and so we want to hear from you here on the Santita Jackson Show. Just call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, and you can also stream us live at talk1017fm.com, talk1017.com, or talk927 talk927.com, or WCPT820.com. WCPT820.com. And hey, if you want to see us on Facebook, yes, me and Lady B, my producer, well, go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. Please like and share, like and share. And over on the YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show, the Santita Jackson Show. And you can like and subscribe. Whew, said a mouthful, everybody. But there it is. We want to see you today. It's Super Tuesday, everybody. Alabama, American Samoa, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, and Virginia will be casting their votes today. Who will emerge victorious? Klobuchar and Senator Amy Klobuchar and Mayor Pete Buttigieg dropped out of the race yesterday. He dropped out. And so now we're seeing the moderates coalesce around Bernie Sanders and, around Joe Biden. Oh, let me not mistake. I think because I just found out, as I was reading the news papers early this morning, that Beto O'Rourke, because I was busy last night doing my Let's Talk About It with Santita Jackson and Friends, he came out and endorsed Joe Biden. You could have blown me over. Could have blown me over. I couldn't believe it. But, you're watching the moderates, the establishment of the party, if you will, line up behind Biden. Will that be enough to push him past Bernie Sanders and this movement? This is about so much more than an election for so many of us. For progressives, from the Warren Sanders wing of the party, this is about moving forward. This is about making the Democrats not be the Dixiecrats of old, but be the Democrats of the new. What do you think is going to happen today? How do you think Joe Biden will do? Will he meet that 15% threshold that you need to meet in so many states in order to get a delegate? Will Biden's support now come from Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg? Will that happen? Or will those supporters look for an alternative? I want you to call me at 773-763-9278 and talk with our panel about it. Let's get through a few of these headlines, Lady B, so that we can find out what is going on today. There is an absolutely remarkable poll from CBS News and YouGov that shows that 56% of Democratic primary voters in Texas and 57% in California hold favorable views of socialism. Did you know that just 37% of Democrats in Texas and 45% of Californians have a positive view of capitalism? What is going on, everybody? You do know that we are in a mixed system. You do know that Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid is a socialist program. And you do know that our best friends over in England, that they have a mixed system too. Most of these systems are mixed. And Wall Street, dare I say, is socialist, because when they're in trouble, they come and get our money. Yeah, that's what happens. And remember, Joe Biden did say he was open to a Republican running mate. Just pulling up some of these old articles that are not that old. They come from the end of 2019. I think it's important for us to know that. Do you think that we are now seeing an anti-Bernie coalition come together? What do you think? What do you think is going to happen in Milwaukee when we get up there in July? What do you think is going to happen? Hey, everybody, will the anti-lynching bill that was just passed in the U.S. House of Representatives, will Mitch McConnell put it before the Senate so that it can become law? H.R. 35, the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act, shepherded through the U.S. House of Representatives by Congressman Bobby Rush, a former member of the of the Black Panther political party. Well, he pushed it through, and 410 to 4, 16 people did not vote. 4 of the congressmen did say, no, this is government overreach. We're not going to vote for this. 4 lawmakers. I think you should know their names. Justin Amash from Michigan, Ted Yoho of Florida, Louis Gohmert of Texas, and Thomas Massey of Kentucky felt that apparently they feel that lynching should not be a federal hate crime. The coronavirus, boy, it's even touching the NBA, everybody. Players have been told by the NBA to avoid high-fiving fans, give them the fist bump, and they should not autograph items, everybody. We're going to continue to bring doctors onto this show as we did yesterday, so we can instruct you as to how you can really, really take care of yourself. Because as I was watching a newscast yesterday, they said masks are not good for well people, because if you sneeze into the mask and you inhale a substance that's not good, you're going to get sick. Keep your hands clean, everybody. Keep them clean. And I cannot keep enough lotion on them. Oh, my goodness. Oh, what happened, everybody? Tonight, the Chicago Blackhawks will be playing the Ducks. And, the Mavericks, well, they went down to the Chicago Bulls last night. And yesterday, guess what? The Bucks had a tough time against the Heat. 105 to 89. Wow. Oh, wow, wow, wow. I mean, what was that? We gotta watch that. In Madison, they're expecting a high of 42 degrees, and in Chicago, we're expecting a high. So it'll almost be spring-like, 48 degrees. Milwaukee, 41 degrees, a high today. And after a really, really tough week in the stock market yesterday, we had a record loss, more than 1,200 points, almost 1,300. More than 3,000 points. Now the Dow rebounded by 1,200 points, almost 1,300 points yesterday. We'll see how all of this works out, everybody. Continue to stream us live at talk1017fm.com and talk927fm.com and WCPT 820.com. And, of course, meet me on the Santita Jackson and Friends page right now, and like and share. And the Santita Jackson Show on on YouTube, and like and subscribe. And, of course, I do a little bit of the after show. We talk for a few minutes after we get off the air. And tonight, if you're in Chicago, come over to 930 East 50th Street. We're having an election watch party. So you don't have to throw your shoe at the television by yourself. You can have some friends. We have got a tremendous panel of guests today to help us review Super Tuesday. What do you think is going to happen today? What will be the impact of these moderates who jumped out the race, and of course Beto O'Rourke fell out the race months ago? Maybe he's more moderate than we thought, Lady B. Maybe so. Well, because he endorsed Joe Biden, as did former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar. They all endorsed Joe Biden yesterday. They almost treat Bernie Sanders and not Elizabeth Warren, not as much, but certainly her positions. They treat them as existential threats. They treat them like they're the coronavirus. In fact, Michael Smerconish, I have liked Michael Smerconish, but I said this was just overreach, if you will, by comparing the Bernie surge to the coronavirus. But moneyed interest, power protects power. Power protects itself, and that's what we're watching. We have got Attorney C.K. Hoffler, everybody, the president-elect of the National Bar Association, which is the largest and oldest black bar association in the world, 66,000 plus lawyers. Attorney Robert Patillo, brilliant civil rights lawyer and radio talk show host out of Atlanta, and Steve Cobble, a veteran of the Jackson 84 and 88 campaigns. A lot of the rules that have made Democratic Party politics more fair. He was part of the team. Indeed, he led the team that helped to negotiate these rules. You used to have a winner-take-all system. You used to have to reach a threshold of 20% in order to get one delegate, even if you got one vote less than the winner. Just ridiculous. Let me talk to you. Let me start with you, Steve Cobble. What are we looking for today? Good morning, my dear, dear friend, Steve Cobble, veteran of the Jackson campaigns and progressive politics for so many years. You're one of the great unsung heroes, really, in American life, and I just thank God for you. Steve Cobble, what are we looking at today? I mean, what happened yesterday? What happened yesterday with all of these moderates dropping out the race and jumping behind Joe Biden?
It happens. I live in Texas now, and I was watching the TV last night, and there was Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar, who, as you may remember, about 2 debates ago, they looked like they were going to tear into each other right on stage, but they were pretending they were all happy and excited to be in the presence of Joe Biden. And then Beto, who ran that great race in Texas 2 years ago, he comes on. And I guess his endorsement was probably personal a lot. They want to stay in good with the powers that be, who are clearly trying to consolidate against Bernie this week and brought Biden back into the lead. So I was a little surprised to see Beto. I think maybe he took a step against the wrong, like his own generation and those following him. But I also think there was probably a lot of career politics going through his mind when he did that. But today there's 14 states in American Samoa, and the Democrats abroad actually start voting, and they finish next week, and 1/3 of the delegates are going to be chosen. So it's a huge day in terms of setting the ground for the remaining 3 months of this, what will probably be a long battle to the finish, maybe reminiscent of Barack Obama versus Hillary Clinton. And there's a reasonable chance at the end of the day that Bernie Sanders will have the most delegates and probably win the most states today, although I said that on Sunday when I was talking to you, and I think Bernie's position is weaker today than it was on Sunday. He probably will still lead in delegates, but it'll probably might only be, about 100 today, and 2 days ago I said it was probably going to be close to 200. The Biden solid victory in South Carolina, Klobuchar and Mayor Pete getting out, and the consolidation and all the free media Biden's gotten in the last 2 days have, gotten them excited that they're going to surge past Bernie and beat him today. I don't think they will, but I do think they are gaining some.
Well, it seems that he was having a very hard time meeting that 15% threshold I was hearing from different reports in California. Do you think that Klobuchar and Buttigieg's exits from the race will help him in California?
I think it certainly does help him. It opens up more space. It takes away, in a sense, it helps him even if he doesn't make the 15%, because it takes away from the number of people that don't make 15%, which means the candidates who do, which is Bernie everywhere, would actually get extra delegates. And now there's fewer people that are going to be under 15%. And some states of the big four, they may all get over 15%. Warren and Bloomberg are having trouble in a bunch of states, but they may make it. And Biden has a few states that he's not doing well. I do think we should remember that Joe Biden's going to have a very good day today in the southern states, which is his strongest region, and especially after the South Carolina vote. But there's 6 or 7 southern states on the ballot, if you count Oklahoma as a semi-southern state. And Biden's got a reasonable chance to win 4 or 5 of them, and he and Sanders are in a close battle for Virginia and Texas. And there's 3 western states, Sanders heavily favored in those, 3 northeastern states, Sanders heavily favored in those, and Minnesota in the Midwest, which Sanders might have won even before Klobuchar dropped out, but will almost certainly win today now that she has. So Sanders is winning the rest of the country, but Biden's going to do well in the southern states, and the victory may be claimed by the candidate that carries Texas today, which is the second biggest state and seems to be a close battle. If I were predicting, which may not be the smartest thing to do right now, I would say I think Bernie's going to win because there were so many early votes, but at a time when he was ahead. But I do think Biden's victory in South Carolina makes it closer than it was.
Would it be smart for the progressives to coalesce as we're watching the moderates and the centrists do? What they have done, rather?
I think the real question is if Warren goes back to her strategy of essentially sticking with issues that she and Bernie agree on and sort of forging a progressive team on things they care about, rather than the tack she's taken in the last couple debates where she goes out of her way to make sure everybody knows she's different from Bernie. if she joins in the consolidated centrist attack on Bernie, then the gains that she makes essentially hurt him. If she seems mostly like an actual progressive partner who's closer to him than to the consolidating center forces, then the delegate she wins could potentially be useful when we get to close to Milwaukee if nobody has a majority. So that's kind of in Warren's hands. I don't think it's going to be a great day for Warren. She's going to win more delegates than she could have expected a couple days ago, but there's a good chance she's going to lose her home state today to Bernie. No senator likes that. That's a pretty public embarrassment that you really don't want to see. And I think, Bernie saw an opening, and I think he was probably irritated at the fact that she was picking at him the last few weeks, and he went into Boston and Springfield and had two big rallies last week, which is, that's not exactly coalition forming. So my sense from that is that Bernie doesn't think that she's going to stay with a coalition and that he's trying to knock her out. My preference 3 weeks ago would have been they work together, but that may be in the real world of politics, where when you're running against people, you get on each other's nerves. That may have been too much to ask.
Oh, yes. It can get quite personal. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what do you see? Because it seems that I'm wondering. Where do we go from here? What do you think is going to happen? I can't imagine that we've gone from one primary a week to 14 in one day. And as Steve Cobble knows, and as David Masiotra in the previous segment, as he noted in the previous segment, Super Tuesday was created, quite frankly, to thwart Reverend Jesse Jackson. He did so surprisingly well. One of the last three persons left standing in 1984. The Democratic Party came up with Super Tuesday, in which they stacked all of these states in one basket because they knew that he could not afford to get around from state to state, and yet he pushed out, Senator Al Gore. He lost. And Reverend Jackson was triumphant in all of the southern states, finishing first and second. What do you see today? What do you see is happening?
Well, first of all, I reflect back. You never should underestimate the power of Jesse Jackson. That's the message there, and the popular appeal that he had, and how he was able to speak to the people and to the interests of people at that time. So what do I think is going to happen today? I do think that Bernie Sanders will prevail ever so slightly. I think that Joe Biden had an incredible day, not just a good day, an incredible day yesterday. He was endorsed by three candidates. Senator O'Rourke was a little bit of a surprise. That the senator endorsed him, not so surprising. That the mayor endorsed him, not so surprising. But he was endorsed with the timing of it. So there's coalition building. And I do think that that's going to have a significant impact on Super Tuesday. However, I do feel that Bernie Sanders' machine has been going so strongly for a long time. As I think the previous speaker said, there's been early voting. And with early voting, that means a lot of votes were in, particularly in states like Texas, and I think also California. And I think that's going to make a measurable difference. It's no surprise that Joe Biden was in Texas, and he's been campaigning very aggressively here of late. So I think it's going to narrow. The field is narrowing, and I think Joe Biden is going to come out. He's going to do well, but I do still think that Bernie Sanders will carry it.
Robert Patillo.
Well, I think we have to talk about the wild card in the race that people keep forgetting, which is Scrooge McDuck, Mike Bloomberg. In California right now, Tom Steyer spent about $35 million before abandoning his campaign. Bernie Sanders spent about $7 million in the state. Mike Bloomberg has spent $70 million in California. So he spent 10 times more than Bernie Sanders has, and he spent so much that Joe Biden basically doesn't even rank in the money game out there. So we have not yet seen what role Bloomberg ad blitz will play in the state. What role his grassroots operation or AstroTurf apparatus will play, because he hasn't been on any of the early state ballots. So if you go state by state, Bloomberg is outspending all the other candidates combined nearly 10-1 in all of the states. So we are yet to see, and we do not know how this will bite into Bernie's lead in California, how it will bite into Bernie's lead in Utah or Maine, what it will do to Joe Biden in Texas and in the swing states. So this is a political outlier, which is almost a first in American political history, because we've never had a candidate show up at the last minute, outspend other campaigns 10-1, and then have his first time on the ballot be on Super Tuesday. And so that kind of throws all predictions up in the air, because even in Massachusetts, where Elizabeth Warren is polling a very strong second.
Hold that thought. Hold it. We'll be right back.
The history of Air America lives here. This is WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
This is John Daniel, the sheet metal workers of Smart Local 265. You may know the Smart Union member as a hero that fixed your AC on the hottest day of the summer, or the professional you trust to heat your home on the coldest of winter days. Of course, Smart Union members install and maintain the equipment that keeps you comfortable. But did you know that sheet metal workers of Smart Local 265 also construct the systems that keep you safe at work and in your communities? We build the clean rooms where pharmaceuticals are developed and manufactured.
I had to laugh.
We certify surgical suites and isolation rooms to maintain the environment in its most critical settings. Smart members install and test smoke and fire management systems in practically every building you or your loved one sets foot in.
Oh my gosh,
I
got out of there so late. I said,
in a situation where every second counts. The next time a sheet metal worker of Smart Local 265 is in your home to keep you comfortable,
there's much more where that came
they're also the ones that keep you safe, and that's smart. Learn more at smart265.org.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago traffic updates.
We can't give it away like this. He's awful. He's awful.
Reagan Tollway eastbound
There's
traffic
much more, I'm telling you, there's much more where this came
The
from.
northbound tri-state
Is this,
has delays. Southwest Highway to 75th.
It seems like
from
it's
Reagan Tollway to around North Avenue. Southbound is crashed past Plainfield Road and another on the exit to Stevenson. Two left lanes
Because I heard,
blocked.
wait a minute, because I heard
20 minutes like up to Montrose Kennedy, 45 minutes O'Hare to downtown. A little quicker the Express. On Eisenhower, 51 minutes, 390 to downtown. 38 from Manheim to Stevenson. Now it's 55 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. Ryan, 25 minutes, 95 to downtown.
Oh my gosh,
24 minutes,
that breaks my heart.
Bishop 422. No delays to report right now in Northwest Indiana. That's traffic. I'm Jim Telemundo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Today on Hey Culligan, cleaner, safer drinking water. We got Chris in Cleveland.
She is the
I
best.
have a water pitcher. Is that safe?
Basic water pitchers are, let's say, passable, but a Culligan reverse osmosis system can do
awful.
way more and help reduce lead, arsenic, something called pesticide runoff.
Hey, Culligan?
Yeah, Chris?
I'll take one of those reverse
osmosis to get the mostest out of your drinking
Exactly.
water. Chris, we're already on the way.
Things I'm on
Let us
camera
help you
right
out
now.
with a free in-home water
But I
test
will,
with
as
the
soon as I
local
get off
Culligan
camera,
water expert
I'll
at
let you know how I really
heyculligan.com.
feel.
You're in
That's
charge
right,
of
people.
hiring,
I
and
can't say
Indeed
anything
has solutions,
right now, but you're
like
not,
online
you're not
skills
on.
tests,
You're not.
which
This
let
is
a
just me.
candidate
You're just
show
in
that
my
they're
ear.
the right hire.
No.
Indeed will also give you the sticky frog, which will suddenly leap and stick to the face of the perfect hire.
Girl, no,
Yeah,
I
okay,
wouldn't do
no
this. We wouldn't have this
sticky
conversation.
But skills
my
tests,
Lord,
that's for sure.
You
See
talk
why
about
independent research by Silk Road shows Indeed delivers 3 times more hires
I'll
than
call you
any
right,
other
but I'll
job
call you
site.
right back.
Visit
We're coming back up.
Indeed.com/promo today and get a free sponsored job upgrade on your first posting. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply.
This is Louis
boy.
Geyer from GWC Energy
This has
Lawyers.
been
Now that cannabis is legal in
amazing.
Illinois,
That's
an
awful.
understanding of the law and the risks associated with ingesting cannabis is critically important.
we got a
Under
lot
the
of
Cannabis
callers.
Act,
Let me
you can legally
bring
ingest marijuana
Robert back
only in
on,
a very limited
and
number
then-
of places. Not in public,
Hey,
not in government or
everybody.
school premises, and not even in your own
Richard
condo or apartment if your
Marks.
landlord has a no smoking policy. A positive test is potentially lethal to your rights in 3 key areas: employment, work injuries, and driving. So if your employer has a zero-tolerance drug and alcohol policy, you can be terminated if you fail a drug test, even though your cannabis consumption was legal. If you're hurt on the job and test positive for cannabis, the legal presumption is that your accident was caused in part because of the cannabis, and your workers' compensation rights can be totally denied. DUI laws have not changed. Impaired means impaired. And a DUI due to cannabis or alcohol can ruin your career. If you want to indulge in legal THC before you ingest, read up on your rights at gwclaw.com.
Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, coming to you live from Chicago, WCPT 820, but coming to you live from Milwaukee. That's right, Talk 1017 FM. I'm so glad to be part of this family today. Thank you, Mike Crute and the Devil's Advocate. That's right. And Talk 92.7 FM in Madison, Wisconsin. We are very, very excited, and thank you for really helping this show to grow and spreading the progressive message throughout the country. We're talking with Jackson, 84 and 88, veteran indeed, one of the seminal figures in progressive politics, you know, in the modern era, Steve Cobble. He has worked on all of these progressive campaigns since and before then. And so he brings a lot of history and he gives us a lot of context, Lady B, for what we're looking at today. Because you go from one campaign a week, one contest a week, to 14 on one day. Well, this is the creation of the establishment to thwart progressives. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, the president-elect of the National Bar Association, 66,000 lawyers, the largest black bar association and the oldest in the world. And of course, Robert Patillo, a brilliant civil rights lawyer. I interrupted you before we had to go to this hard break, because you know we're in syndication now, Robert Patillo. You know how that goes. You were making a point on the other side of the break. I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
Oh, no problem at all. First, I understand how those commercials got to pay the bills. But the point is that we don't know what the effect of Bloomberg's spending spree is going to be. An example is in Massachusetts. Bernie Sanders has spent about $500,000 in Massachusetts. He's the top spender outside of Bloomberg. Bloomberg has spent $10 million. So we haven't yet seen the effect that the ad blitz nationwide is going to have, and if it can swing some of these elections. And the assumption has been, and the common logic, that all of the Bloomberg votes are coming from Biden. But realistically, the people who are deciding on Bloomberg are people who are unsatisfied with Biden as a choice, and they have been coming from other candidate campaigns, almost the catch-all. So will be interesting also to see where Bloomberg's support comes from and if he's able to swing states, because realistically he would only need to come in second in 1 or 2 states to throw off the delegate math to really throw this election into turmoil and really cause that convention fight we've all been worried about.
You know, let me go to some of these callers. People have been waiting. Let me go to Anita from South Carolina. How you doing, Miss Anita? Anita? You know what, let's put her on hold because I can hear her in the background. Let me go to Triple T. Triple T, what's on your mind?
Good morning. I see a twin-engine train wreck. Democratic Party stopped being for everyday people by the time Clinton got in office. The culmination being the Telecommunications Act that left us with 6 major media outlets. Also, he gave us Glass-Steagall being repealed, which led to the crash of 2008. At this point, I do not see the critical mass that Democratic Party needs to win. The critical mass of black voters is not going to be there. You have Bernie Sanders being a hypocrite. These people can receive reparations, but he won't fight for them for black people. You have the double-edged choice of Biden and Bloomberg, who will be together, but they both represent the death of black people in mass incarceration and stop and frisk. There's no way this party is going to win unless it comes back and puts something on the table that black people seriously see as a benefit to our community. It's not going to happen without that.
Thank you, Triple T. Robert Patillo, panel. Do you agree with his assessment?
I agree if there is with his assessment in this sense. If Joe Biden, I'll put aside Bloomberg, but if Joe Biden does not seriously sit down and talk to the African American leadership, whoever is comprised of that leadership, and I would include in there Reverend Jackson, you got to talk to our icons, our heroes, those who got us where we are in this political process, and talk about issues that matter and what is he planning to do on issues that are important to our community. If that doesn't happen, then I think that he cannot just continue to believe that he can take the African American vote as a monolithic group for granted.
But hold on, CK. But I want to please engage me for a hot second, because I'm wondering if he feels that he would need to do that given the overwhelming numbers of black voters he got in South Carolina. And I say that because he said, "You brought me back. You saved me." And yet, in that speech, he promised black people nothing. Behind something like that, CK, Attorney Patillo, Steve Cobble, you come out and say, "You saved me. Now let me tell you what I'm going to do for you." He did none of that. None of that.
He did none of that, but it's not over yet. It's not over yet.
And you know,
and if we don't
I've been
okay, first you, CK, and then you, Robert Patillo. I can see. I think I plucked a nerve. I think I struck something. I hit a cavity.
well, you have, and it's one of those cavities that hurts. Oh my goodness! I need a root canal. What I would say is, we have to go to him. There needs to be an insistence on an agenda. That's what other communities do. And it's black and brown people. That is critical. Because it's clear that he can't win without that vote. And we've got a lot of other states, and then we've got to defeat Donald Trump. So there's time, but the time is now. So I think he still is taking the black vote for granted, but I think he needs to stop. He needs to stop, because I think his statements, his comments after, were sounded like his comments before South Carolina. There was really basically no real difference. I think that really put a lot of African American voters off. They were expecting something different. And if you throw Bloomberg in there, if he's not readily distinguishable on many fronts in terms of stop and frisk and other issues that impact the black community, if he's not readily distinguishable with Bloomberg, it's going to be a major problem. And he won't be able to count on the black vote. He can't count on young black voters right now. So I'm just saying he has to be very careful and tread very lightly on this, and I think he needs to do the right thing. I mean, that's what you do when you have a base that saved you, that revived your campaign. Those are his words.
But but power concedes nothing without demand. If we demand nothing, nothing's going to come through. It's just like he went to South Carolina, he spent no money. And all he had to do was show up, and folks voted for him. I just think that's not smart politics. CK, Robert Patillo, Steve Cobble. That's not smart politics.
Well, I've been beating this drum since Iowa, saying that we saw the writing was on the wall, that Joe Biden was going to be depending on the black vote to save him, and not just Joe Biden. The establishment of the Democratic Party. All these people who are coming together and consolidating to try to stop Bernie are all depending on black folks, little old black ladies sitting in gymnasiums in the South, in Arkansas, Alabama, North Carolina, Missouri, so on and so forth. They're depending on them for the establishment of the Democratic Party to have any viability going forward. And the time to make demands isn't after you already did the thing. The time to make demands is leading into that. And that's why it's so important for us to set this agenda. This is why it's important for us to come together as a black community holistically and decide what are the 3 or 4 things that we can agree on. The LGBTQIAPK community.
Are you serious?
Those are all your letters.
Okay.
It's a very diverse community. You got lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, asexual, pansexual, kink, non-binary, non-conforming, gender fluid. They all have different issues, but they can come together
to decide that, look, marriage equality is one of the things we care about. We want to ensure that we have access to jobs and civil rights. We want to make sure there's hate crime legislation to prevent us from being killed. So if they can come together over the entire alphabet to set 3 or 4 things in their agenda, we have to be able to do the same thing, because if you are not demanding very clear and specific items, then you'll get these vague and ambiguous promises. We want to help people of color. We want to help minorities. No, you are depending on little old black ladies in a gym to save your entire Democratic Party establishment. We don't want none of these vague promises. We need X, Y, Z, what's going to be done on day one, and that's what we have to demand.
Steve Cobble, I'm not going to exclude you from this conversation, because you know from your experience that, well, at least certainly your experience with Reverend Jackson, he has always had a history of demanding, having requirements. You know, he said, you know, we cannot support you and then you not in turn support us. You need to deliver these things for us. What are we looking at right now? Because Joe Biden has put nothing on the table.
Well, I agree with you, Santita, and I agree with both the speakers before. An agenda is important. No Democrat wins without a good turnout of African Americans. And Reverend Jackson, of course, took that to a new level. He stayed in through the conventions both times, and he bargained for issues that mattered. He bargained for the Democrats to acknowledge that South Africa needed to be free. He changed the rules. He argued for no first use of nuclear weapons. He had a discussion about Palestinian Israel for the first time on the floor of the Democratic Convention. Those things that mattered, he fought for, and the rules changes he made eventually allowed Barack Obama to become president over Hillary Clinton. Under the old rules, he would not have won the primary. And the problem is, as I think that both speakers touched on, is Jim Clyburn already drove the car out of the driveway and left the agenda behind. Unless he has a secret one in his back pocket, 60% of South Carolina went for Joe Biden, and the only promise on the table was an African-American woman on the Supreme Court, that's not insignificant, but I assume that there's quite a bit more that people wish they could hear from their candidate. And the key black southern states are going to be 2/3 gone after today. They're, seven out of the old 11 will have voted. The states that are basically so heavily African American, because most of the whites are Republicans in the South. Most of them are voting right now as we speak, and so it's never too late, but it's later than it should be for putting an agenda on the table.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, just getting a black person on the Supreme Court, we have Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court. Philosophically, someone asked me this last night as I go to these callers, just very quick. Yes. Oh, of course.
Part of the reason we have Clarence Thomas is because of Joe Biden.
Ooh, please say that. What do you mean by that?
They had Joe Biden judiciary and would not let Anita Hill's, the women that would have confirmed Anita Hill's points did not get to testify. And he also double-crossed her. He told her that she would get to go first. And then they switched because the Republicans demanded that Thomas gets to go first. He got to go first. Then Anita Hill went, and then they let Thomas come back and speak a second time during prime time. So he not only got to go twice to her once, he got much heavier coverage for his comments than she did. And then her backup crew that knew that she was telling the truth was not allowed to testify. One of the women, Attorney Higginbotham, was with her. They were waiting to go testify in Washington. They told her they never called them. And Joe was the head of the committee. And Anita Hill has been pretty clear that she's been dissatisfied with both the way Biden handled it and with his non-apology since. So Clarence Thomas being on the the Supreme Court for the rest of our lives, which seems to be our fate, is Joe Biden gets an assist there, whether he wants it or not.
Look, I think it's important to tell the story. I mean, because that's what happened with busing. You know, we have the most segregated public school system that we've had in 50 years. Ed Brooke, the only black senator at the time, needed his support. He turned his back on him. I mean, come on. I think you need to know who you're voting for as people feel this comfort and nostalgia. That's not enough. We have to deal with some policy. Let me go to Ron from Naperville. Ron, what's on your mind?
Hi, Santita. How are you?
Hey, sweetie. It's good hearing your voice.
Thank you. I think the mission is going to be, we got to get Trump out. I believe that we're going to see Biden probably be, if not close second, the first, a very, very razor-thin close second. What I think we're not going to be able to predict, but I think is going to happen, is Warren is going to, at the convention or shortly before it, fold in with Biden. Because you saw her take a very serious step towards practical in her platform when she got beat up about her health care and all the other things. Well, obviously it doesn't get done in a day. So she's a very practical progressive, and I think she will recognize that it's better to be inside the tent peeing out, as Johnson said about Goldwater, than to be outside the tent peeing in. So I think she wants to be part of the action, and I imagine you'll see her as the VP. And I really hope Cory Booker gets brought in as a cabinet member, because I think he was actually the person who had the most heart. So there I am.
Well, and that's a whole lot. Sending you much love, my sweet. Let me go to Mark from Bronzeville. Mark, what's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Santita? The thing I'm getting some concern over is that there's a conversation about a anti or stopping burning movement in the party. And I guess what troubles me about that is, do I have to be a part of want to stop Bernie to not want to support Bernie? I mean, can I evaluate him as a Democratic socialist myself and say, I don't think this is the best position for you? Do I have that right without being brought into a group that I'm not necessarily opposed to Bernie. I don't like, what he has put forth, I don't like, but it seems almost like there's a second guessing of the motives of people. Oh, you just want to stop Bernie. No, I want the best person that can win, and the best person that can lead the ticket. And at this point, from my little, corner of the world, I don't see that as being Bernie Sanders. I don't see the ability to develop that leadership network that starts from the grassroots and bringing leadership up. I just don't see it, and I think that and this is what.
But that's not the conversation. But that's not the conversation you're hearing here. What we're doing is bringing up his record, and there is, quite frankly, and I'm going to bring Steve Cobble in here. There is a Stop Bernie, a Stop Progressive, a Stop Jesse movement. We've seen this before. Stay right there, Mark. We have seen this before. And you see it all throughout. Whenever people oppose corporate interest, the moneyed interest, they consolidate. Power protects itself. I'm not mad at them. I just think we need to be clear on it so we can fight them back. Steve Cobble, why don't you respond to Mark?
I am a Bernie supporter, so he should evaluate this, and he can toss out my opinion if he wants. But his own determination of whether Bernie's the best one to run is obviously his, and he has the right to decide that Bernie's not the best one. What's happening in the last 4 days does not have too much to do with the evaluation he's making. It's clearly based on Stop Bernie. A panic set in when Bernie won Nevada with, over 40% of the vote, and showed strength with young people and Latinos. And they were like, oh my goodness, the party establishment, what are we going to do? And the pressure immediately increased on, you guys need to drop out. which both Pete and Amy had said they were not going to do, and then suddenly they did right before. And as I mentioned earlier, these two people who couldn't stand each other magically showed up in Dallas last night to endorse Joe Biden together. And then Beto came out of retirement to help out. Senators in Virginia and around the country and mayors popped up and said, we're for Joe Biden. Even before Harry Reid, in the face of the 45% that Bernie got in Nevada, and having served with both Biden and Bernie, he came out for Biden. He went opposed to his state to say he was for Joe Biden. So whether or not you think that's a sensible thing to do, it seems clear to me, and it certainly seems clear to all the people who support Bernie, that this is a panic that set in because he took the lead, and they were going to stop him. And I'll just point out that no Democrat has ever won the first three contests in a row, which Bernie just did. And Biden's getting more free press and more puff for his victory in South Carolina, in which he was never behind in any poll.
Wait. And this was his first victory in 32 years. Wait, Steve. He's been running for 32 years. This is the...
Right. I mean, he ran against Reverend 88. He didn't make it to the starting line. And, of course, Reverend ended up winning 13 primaries and caucuses. And the reason Super Tuesday didn't work, as you pointed out, they set it up in reaction to Jesse. They forgot African Americans vote in the South. So they assembled all these southern states thinking that would be a good place to nominate a conservative, and they forgot African Americans could vote. And Reverend Jackson won 5 southern states that day, and the most votes and the most delegates. When he won Michigan in the late March, the same kind of panic set in across the Democratic establishment. Oh my goodness, people like Jackson, he's going to win. And he was ahead in delegates at that moment, and all the forces of the party came together in various ways to do their best to make sure he did not win Wisconsin the next week, and he did not win New York 2 weeks after that. And they were able to barely defeat us in both states and turn us away, and then Dukakis was on the road to being the nominee, and we know what happened in November. So my personal worry is we might be following a similar track. They're going to stop Bernie. They're going to nominate Joe Biden. He doesn't appear to me to be up to the job anymore. I don't see how anybody could have watched the 5 debates we've had so far and think that Biden was anything but, he was probably better than Bloomberg. But of everybody else who's been on that stage, Joe's probably second worst. He had one good debate so far, one decent debate. I don't even know if you could call it good. So I worry about him personally, leaving aside my Bernie tendencies. I worry about him on a stage against Donald Trump in the fall.
Oh.
And
because Trump is going to take no prisoners. No, you're not. I don't think you're biased. I'm going to have to get out of here. But everybody, Anita, Robert, everybody who's online, if you want to talk just after we get off the air, just stay right here because we typically do this on the after show. But I am going to have to, I want to give CK and Attorney Robert Patillo, Attorney Hoffler, about 30 seconds, your closing thought.
My closing thoughts are, just to summarize, it is my sincere hope, desire, and prayer that Joe Biden's feet are held to the fire as it relates to the African American vote. It's never too late, but as some have said on this call, it's a little late to be talking about an agenda, and we are at Super Tuesday. But there are other elections and other primaries, and he does have to defeat Trump, so he cannot do without the black vote. It cannot happen. So the agenda should be set now. There should be negotiations now. I think that I sincerely hope that is happening. If not, he needs to engage, and we need to insist. So that's my hope. I feel the only candidate that's currently running that I feel badly for is Elizabeth Warren. And I say that because there's a good likelihood that she will lose in her own backyard. And but that's tough, and I think she's a strong candidate in terms of what she feels philosophically, what the issues that she addresses. She's one of the few candidates that addresses a lot of different issues across the board, but I do believe that at some point she's going to drop out of the race.
Robert Patillo, hard 30 seconds.
Absolutely. I think we need to look at Mayor Pete, since he's now dropped out of the race. His Frederick Douglass plan was a great model plan for the African American community and an agenda to be set. He talked about a lot on the Breakfast Club. Also, Bloomberg has a very comprehensive plan, the Greenwood Initiative, as to what he is going to do for the African American community. We have to look at the role of money in our political system tonight, and if Mayor Bloomberg is indeed able to buy multiple states and change the outcome of this election, it's more important than ever to stay vigilant and stay woke.
Steve Cobble, I am going to have to let that be the last thought, but everybody, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for welcoming me onto this station. You know, I mean, we've had a great time today. Great time. Oh, boy. Talk 101.7 FM up in Milwaukee. Talk 92.7 FM in Madison. I love you. I'm so glad that you joined WCPT 820 here in Chicago so that we can have a good time here on the Santita Jackson Show. On behalf of me and Lady B, we are out. God bless you. And I'll see you tomorrow. Mark wants to talk.
The Tom Hartman radio program provides all of the intelligence, information, and insight you need to win the water cooler wars. Weekdays,
get on out of here so we
right
can
here on WCPT
get on with the day.
Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Anita, you ready for the episode?
Was that Anita? Okay.
Do you have a house or two flat you'd like to sell quickly?
Okay, hold on.
Then call URB Chicago. Get an immediate cash offer and receive your check in as little as 7 days. No need to make repairs, no brokers or real estate commissions. Get a market-based, hassle-free cash offer on the spot.
1 minute, you're gonna
URBChicago.com is the area's oldest direct buyer of real estate. They buy as is, even properties that are boarded up, have tax liens or building code issues. Stop worrying about bad tenants, high payments, or even repairs you can't afford.
Oh, I love you, Steve Cobble.
Thank you so much. I love you, Steve. Real estate in rough condition. URB Chicago.
He got up real early.
Gives you a fast way to sell at a fair market value.
Hey, everybody, if you want to do a little bit of after show talk, you can call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278 if you call in the next few seconds. Otherwise, we're going to talk to Anita, and then we're going to be out of here.
Did you know you can listen to WCPT stream via their website, TuneIn Radio, iTunes, and Windows Media?
Well, when
Click
we
the
get
Listen
out of
Live
here,
tab
right?
at WCPT820.com. Days. No need to make repairs, no brokers or real estate commissions. Get a market-based, hassle-free cash offer on the spot. URBChicago.com is the area's oldest direct buyer of real estate. They buy as is, even properties that are boarded up, have tax liens or building code issues. Stop worrying about bad tenants, high payments, or even repairs you can't afford.
The history of Air America lives here. This is WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
This is AP News.
Okay.
Anita? Anita? I love you. How are you? Of course.
But the problem I see happening,
You need to turn this
the
up.
problem with the American public is, I think the people are so busy working, they don't know how to manage, how to really come out and handle Bernie and translate it to their children. And Bernie doesn't have time to translate how to do it with your family and get it together and all of that. And he's not going to be patient with that. And so the people kind of turn away from Bernie because of that. But Joe Biden, if he decides to do it, he's going to have to stick to it, because Trump isn't just, I voted for Trump last time. That's not the complete solution.
Now, let me ask you this. Why did you vote for Trump? Anita, I'm curious.
I voted for Trump because Hillary, I was very concerned about our money going to wars, because the African American community continues to lose money. Okay, and they always cut, you know who they cut first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I didn't want Hillary arguing with Israel about that as being female. I just felt for her. They're kind of rough over there. So I voted for Trump to deal with all of that. It wasn't necessarily Republican, Democrat. It was just, okay, this is who I'm faced with. Who do I feel can handle that? And I'm still worried about the war. I almost didn't vote for Barack because of that, too, because of the wars. I didn't want him to fight Israel either, because you have to deal with Israel, and they're not easy to deal with. Bernie, I don't know, I don't know. Warren, keep everybody in. I'm sorry the other people dropped out because it was important. One guy was the Buttigieg, I think, was talking about the killings, and the other lady had her issues that were good. I'm sorry they even had to drop out because sometimes people don't start out fast and strong, but they end really well, and, we lost them. Now we're down to Bernie and Biden and maybe Warren, and we can't count anybody out, and I think Cory Booker would also do well as a vice president.
Okay, so, well, do you have a candidate? Is there anyone you favor as we go to vote this year?
Santita.
Yeah.
Voted. I think your brother had 98% of all of the votes or something like that, and they found a way to get rid of him. It's not just that you vote. You have to know how to be strategic in managing what you decide. You can't put that person in and say, you're Jesus Christ, and we can just sit here and watch you perform miracles. The people have to participate. They just want to go to work and have a daycare center, and that's not how you manage government. When you got corporate people, they don't care about any of that. All they care about is that you pay them. That's true, but you still have to manage your life, your government. And American people are not owning up to that, and you can't dump that on Biden. You can't dump it on Bernie. Bernie's not going to let you do it, and neither is, I keep forgetting his name, Bloomberg. They're not going to let the American people just sit and say, okay, you're Jesus Christ, and we can go run and wait for you to perform miracles. And that's the biggest problem with the Democrats. The voters also don't want to do their job like your dad. Your dad goes out there and has the skin of his tail on fire all the time. But they think he's a miracle. He likes it. No, he doesn't like it. He doesn't want to see people suffer. So if you let yourself suffer, what is a candidate going to do? And Donald Trump doesn't care if you let yourself suffer. So the people are going to have to man up and mature and stay on this. I lost Jesse Jackson Jr. as my congressman and my governor. I'm very angry with the Democratic voters right now. I'm very angry that I had to lose them.
Well, the voters did not take Congressman Jackson out, but I hear you. But there's always, it seems to me that there's always a pushback against people who are really trying to move the ball forward. And those who are fighting for the least of these, I think we need to be mindful of that. It's not personal for me, everybody. It's about principle. It's about people who fight for people. And they always get the pushback. And that's something I think we need to be mindful of that, Anita.
Your brother, I'm sure Martin Luther King would have rather lived here and said, hey, that's too big of a challenge. I'm sure his family thinks about, if Dad was only here. And look at some of those people don't even care that he's made this struggle and we've had to suffer like this. American people, the Democrats, you have to fight the battle or you're going to lose. No decision is a decision, too. If you decide to just vote him in and he's Jesus, his name is not Jesus. Okay, it's over with. Jesus done what he's done. He told you to do what you're supposed to do. And then they don't do it, and then they wonder why they keep getting slapped. I'm not willing to put a candidate like Jesse Jackson Jr. out there again to get slapped. I'm not. He took that burden, and Blagojevich, they paid a price for that. They shouldn't have had to pay for that. The people have to really stand up. They can't be inconsistent. You can't be petty and arguing with your boyfriend or your husband or your neighbor because they put something on your lawn. You have to deal with the real things in life. People are putting their tails on the line for you, and they're getting tired of you, too. They're getting tired. People are tired of putting themselves out, and then you don't show up right. They shouldn't have to beg you to vote or teach your children how to vote. I don't have anything else to say. I would probably vote for Biden or Warren. I would like to vote for Bernie, but because American people are not going to support him and stay on him in case he does something wrong, then I run risk that he may make a decision that I have to live with. And I'm tired of living with decisions like that. They're very costly to me.
Well, I will tell you, one of the great lessons that we have to learn, one of the great takeaways in American politics is that voting is the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end. Once you vote for someone and, once they get in, then another fight begins. Another fight begins. Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without demand. I don't care if you like someone or not. Just understand that once they get into power, you must demand from them. You have to be in the streets marching. You have to get on the phone calling. You have to send the emails. You have to be involved in order to get what it is that you need. So, Anita, your final thought?
You could not party. You could not be on drugs. You could not be drinking. You could not worry about paying for your couch. When you've got to worry about your kid getting on a bus, your kid having health care, your home after a natural disaster having fun, there are serious adult issues. We're not juveniles. We have to make decisions like Reverend Jesse Jackson, and God forbid Martin Luther King, things like this continuing to happen. And South Carolina, I believe they might have voted for Biden because look at what happened in the church. And some of those people took a stand and said, hey, no, we're not having it. So Donald Trump does have something to deal with.
Okay. All right, Anita. Miss Anita, it's always wonderful hearing your voice and getting your insights. Sending you much love, my sister. Oh, bless your heart. I do work hard, but I've been blessed I do work that I really enjoy and that I love. And then I get a chance to meet people like you, Miss Anita. How about that?
A chance to love you and Reverend Jackson more. And you know what? I think about him getting older every day, and I thought of him leaving me here with these dead weight people. It's not a good one. It's not a good thought. So thank God for Jonathan, but Jonathan doesn't want to bear that burden either of people not coming out doing what they have to do.
I love you, Anita. I love you. I love you. Everybody, I want to thank you. I want to thank you. See, we love Anita. She's down in North Carolina. She used to be here in Chicago. I want to thank you all for your support today. Really, we've been so excited by the opportunity to be at 101.7 in Milwaukee and 92.7 in Madison. So, we're going to sign off and from here at WCPT 820 in Chicago. We'll see you tomorrow morning. I love you, love you, love you, love you, and thank you for your support. It's because of your support, my Morning Stars, and everybody here in Chicago and people around the country, quite frankly, that we've had this opportunity, and we're looking at going into other cities. And so it's a real, real, real blessing, a real blessing. And we just thank you. Thank you for your support. Love you very much on behalf of me and Lady B.
Hello.
No. Wait, I think I held it incorrectly. Tonight we will be at Rainbow Push. I'm going to run through there. I'm not going to be able to stay long because I haven't had a lot of sleep since we got back from South Carolina. And I'm kind of seeing it on my body. And just need to get a little bit of rest. But tonight ought to be a very interesting night, a very exciting night. So we will see how everything shakes out on Super Tuesday. We'll talk about that, of course, tomorrow. We're going to analyze it here. The best political analysis you can find on the radio, on television, anywhere is right here on the Santita Jackson Show. I love you, everybody. See you tomorrow after Super Tuesday. I wonder how many of the results we'll get. We'll know enough. We'll get a better picture of what this Democratic race is looking like and of what the upcoming presidential race could look like. Really, hey, we need to